My name is Emma Reynolds. I was 16 years old when the man who married my mother decided I was old enough to pay for the right to exist in my own home. It happened 3 days after my birthday. I was sitting at my desk, the late afternoon sun slanting through the tall windows of my bedroom, working through a page of calculus problems that refused to cooperate. Numbers had always made sense to me. They followed rules. They didn't lie just because it was convenient. The knock on my door wasn't really a knock. It was sharp, deliberate, the kind of sound meant to remind you who had power. I already knew who it was. "Come in," I said, not bothering to look up. Noah Reynolds stepped inside without waiting for permission, his broad frame filling the doorway. He was still in his auto shop uniform, navy coveralls streaked with grease, steel-toed boots leaving faint marks on my carpet, like he owned the space already. He always did that, took up room, left marks. "Emma," he said, voice flat, "we need to talk." He sat on the edge of my bed without asking, the mattress creaking under his weight. I set my pencil down slowly and turned toward him. "About what?" "You're 16 now," he said. "Old enough to work, old enough to contribute." Contribute. The word made my stomach tighten. Contribute how? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Rent, $400 a month. The sentence landed between us like something thrown. $400? I repeated. "That's fair," Noah continued smoothly. "Room and board. This neighborhood isn't cheap. Your mother and I talked it over. It's time you learned how the real world works." I worked part-time at Henderson's Diner. Coffee refills, pie plates, long shifts on my feet for tips that barely added up. On a good month, I made just over $300. "Noah," I said carefully, "I'm still in high school. I'm trying to save for college." He laughed, not kindly, not amused. "College," he scoffed. "Sweetheart, take a look around. Your mom's working double shifts at the hospital just to keep this roof over our heads. College is a luxury we can't afford. Time to grow up." I stared at him. This man had married my mother 2 years earlier and moved into the Victorian house on Maple Street, the house where I'd taken my first steps, where my grandfather taught me chess at the kitchen table, where my mom used to read to me on the front porch while the oak tree out back rustled in the wind. Noah had walked in with his toolbox and his opinions and rearranged our lives like furniture. "What if I can't pay?" I asked quietly. His mouth curved into something cold. "Then you find somewhere else to live. Simple. Final." After he left, I sat in the growing darkness of my room, listening to his voice downstairs as he told my mother about our productive conversation. I could hear the exhaustion in her replies, the way she agreed too quickly. Outside my window, the oak tree my grandfather had planted scraped gently against the second-story glass. He'd planted it the year my mom was born. Said strong roots mattered. It had been hidden in my jewelry box for 3 years, tucked beneath tangled bracelets and costume necklaces. Grandpa had pressed it into my hands just before he died, his fingers warm and steady. "Only open it when you're ready, Emma Bear," he'd whispered, "and only if someone tries to take what isn't theirs." I broke the seal with shaking hands. Inside were documents I didn't fully understand. Legal papers, property records, official seals, and a handwritten note in Grandpa's careful script. "The house has been in trust since you were born. Your mother knows, but I made her promise to let you discover this when the time was right. Trust Jacob Henley. He will help you understand the rest." The name made my pulse spike. Jacob Henley, the lawyer downtown. Grandpa had called him a good man. The next morning, I skipped first period and sat across from Mr. Henley in his mahogany-paneled office, the air faintly smelling of old books and peppermint candy. "Emma," he said gently, standing to greet me, "I've been waiting for this call." He spread the documents across his desk. "This house, 345 Maple Street, has been held in the Emma Catherine Reynolds Trust since the day you were born." The room tilted. "Your stepfather," he continued, voice careful, "has no legal claim to the property and no right to demand rent from you." The realization hit like ice water. Noah had been collecting money from my mother for 2 years. Mortgage payments that didn't exist, fear disguised as responsibility. "What do?" I asked. Mr. Henley leaned back. That depends, he said, on what kind of lesson you want him to learn. For 2 weeks, I played the perfect victim. I picked up extra shifts at the diner, came home smelling like fryer oil and exhaustion, counted crumpled bills at the kitchen table. Only $280 this week, I announced loudly one night. Noah grunted from his recliner. Work smarter, he said, not harder. I documented everything. Every threat, every lie, every fake document he left lying around. You've got 1 week, he said one evening, arms crossed. 400 or you're out. I called Mr. Henley the moment I was alone. Perfect, he said. We're ready for phase 2. Phase 2 involved my Aunt Bethany and pretending to leave the only home I'd ever known. Noah thought he was winning. He had no idea the game had already turned. The hardest part about pretending to lose was remembering that I wasn't actually powerless anymore. Power, I learned quickly, doesn't feel loud when you first get it. It feels quiet, heavy, like something fragile you're afraid to drop if you move too fast. Mr. Henley made that clear the second time I met him. You can't rush this, he said, steepling his fingers as I sat across from him in the same leather chair. If you confront him now, he'll deny everything. He'll lie. And people like Noah are very good at convincing others they're the victim. I swallowed. So I just let him keep doing this? For now, he replied gently. We let him believe he's in control. That sentence stayed with me. Let him believe. Mr. Henley explained the trust in detail, walking me through documents line by line, translating legal language into something a 16-year-old could understand without talking down to me. The house wasn't just in my name. It had been structured to be untouchable. My grandfather had set it up so that no spouse of my mother, present or future, could ever claim ownership, equity, or decision-making power over the property. Taxes, utilities, and maintenance could be paid by my mom, but the deed itself was locked behind layers of legal protection. Protection Noah never bothered to check. He assumed, Mr. Henley said calmly, that because your mother lived here, he could control it. That assumption is about to cost him everything. The part that hurt wasn't learning that Noah had been lying. It was learning how long. 2 years of fake mortgage payments. 2 years of my mother working overtime shifts, missing holidays, coming home with aching feet and apologizing to me for being tired. 2 years of college money quietly rerouted into Noah's pocket. He told her they were barely staying afloat, I said, my voice tight. Mr. Henley nodded. Financial control is often the first step. I thought about all the times Noah had reminded my mom how lucky she was to have him, how irresponsible she'd be without his guidance, how grateful she should feel that he was handling things. I don't want to destroy her, I said suddenly. Mr. Henley met my eyes. I know. That was when I decided. We wouldn't expose Noah by screaming or accusations. We'd let him reveal himself. For the next week, I leaned into the role he'd written for me. I came home late, shoulders slumped, apron still smelling like grease. I sighed loudly while counting tips. I asked stupid questions on purpose. Do you think I should quit school and work full-time? I asked one night, voice small. Noah barely looked up from the television. Now you're thinking, he said. Every word felt like swallowing glass. Mom watched me with worried eyes, guilt written across her face. She slipped me 20s when Noah wasn't looking, apologized in whispers. I'm so sorry, Em, she murmured one night in the hallway. He says it's for your own good. I hugged her tightly, forcing myself not to cry. It's okay, I lied. I'll figure it out. Behind the scenes, Mr. Henley was building a case. He instructed me on how to record conversations legally, what documents to photograph, what phrases mattered, threats, deadlines, claims of ownership. Noah was generous with all three. You don't pay, you're out, he said one morning while pouring himself coffee. This isn't a charity. I recorded it. He left a fake mortgage statement on the counter that afternoon. I photographed it. Each piece slid into place like a puzzle. The breaking point came faster than I expected. You've got 1 week, Noah announced on a Tuesday night, standing in the kitchen doorway like a judge delivering a sentence. I'm done being Mr. Nice Guy. What if I can't find it? I asked. Not my problem, he snapped. You're old enough to work. old enough to pay your way. Mom tried to intervene. Noah, maybe we can... No, he cut her off. This is how the world works. That night, I locked myself in my room and called Mr. Henley. We're ready, he said after listening quietly. But we need one more thing. What? An exit. That's when my Aunt Bethany came in. Bethany was my mother's older sister, sharp-tongued and allergic to men who over-explain themselves. She'd never liked Noah, called him too smooth for someone with greasy hands. When I told her the plan, she didn't hesitate. Oh, I'd love to help, she said. I've been waiting for this. The next evening, Bethany called my mom. I listened from the stairway as her voice carried through the kitchen. Emma called me crying, Bethany said loudly. She says Noah's kicking her out. Linda, how can you let him do that to your own child? Mom's voice cracked. He says it's about responsibility. Responsibility, Bethany snapped. She's 16. That man has you so twisted you can't see straight. The argument escalated exactly as planned. Bethany offered to take me in, finish school in Portland, start fresh. When Mom told Noah about it later, I watched his face carefully. He didn't look guilty. He looked relieved. That might be for the best, he said. She needs consequences. That was the moment I knew. He wasn't teaching me anything. He was clearing space. I packed a single suitcase that night. Clothes I didn't care about. Nothing sentimental. Nothing that mattered. The next morning, Noah helped load it into Bethany's car. You take care of yourself, kid, he said, patting my shoulder. Maybe this will teach you to appreciate what you had. I nodded, played my part. We drove away while he stood in the driveway of a house he thought he controlled. But we didn't go to Portland. We went somewhere closer, somewhere where Noah could keep digging. The hotel room smelled like stale carpet cleaner and lemon soap. It wasn't Portland. It wasn't freedom. It was a waiting room. Aunt Bethany shut the door behind us and leaned against it, arms crossed, studying my face like she expected me to break apart now that we were alone. You okay? She asked. I nodded, then shook my head, then nodded again. My chest felt tight, like I'd been holding my breath for days and didn't know how to let it out properly. You don't have to be brave in here, she said quietly. I know, I replied, but I need to be ready. Ready was the word Mr. Henley had used, too. The suite was under his firm's name. Nothing fancy, just neutral walls and a desk by the window where I spread out my notebooks and phone chargers like I was still pretending to be a normal student with homework to do. That first night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying Noah's face in the driveway. The relief, the calculation, the way he'd already moved on from me before the car even turned the corner. By morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Did you get there safe? I typed back immediately. Yes, Aunt Bethany says hi. There was a long pause before her reply. I'm so sorry, Em. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. It's okay, I wrote. I'll be fine. Another lie. Another brick in the wall we were building. By noon, Noah made his first move. He posted my room online. Bethany found the listing before I did. $400 a month, she read aloud, lips curling. Utilities included. Quiet neighborhood. Available immediately. Send it to Mr. Henley, I said. She already was. From that moment on, Noah unraveled quickly. Without me in the house, there was no performance left to maintain. No teenager to intimidate. No one watching closely. He started showing the room to strangers. Collected deposits. Promised availability. Mr. Henley brought in a private investigator named Torres, a former detective with a calm voice and eyes that missed nothing. He's sloppy, Torres said during our first call. Confident people always are. Torres posed as a college transfer looking for housing. Fake references, clean backstory. Noah loved him, gave him a full tour, talked about his house like it was an extension of his ego. Collected a deposit on the spot. He's doing this with multiple people, Torres reported later. Same story, same promises. It wasn't just fraud, it was habit. Then Noah escalated. With me gone, he turned his attention fully to my mother. He told her this was their chance, Torres explained. Said losing you was hard, but now they could finally get ahead. I imagined him at the kitchen table, voice gentle, hands folded like he was offering salvation. He suggested refinancing the house, Torres continued. pulled out official-looking paperwork, told her the equity was just sitting there. My stomach twisted. Mom had always trusted paperwork, trusted authority, trusted men who sounded certain. She signed, Torres said quietly. She thought it was legitimate. That was the moment fear crept in. This wasn't about rent anymore. This was about disappearance. Mr. Henley confirmed it that afternoon. No legitimate bank would approve this, he said. Which means Noah is going through unofficial channels. How bad is that? I asked. Bad enough that families lose homes and never see the money, he replied. Good enough that criminals vanish before consequences catch up. I pressed my fingers into my palm, grounding myself. How far do we let him go? Mr. Henley didn't answer immediately. Until intent is undeniable, he said at last. Right now, he can claim ignorance, confusion, mistakes. And later? Later, he commits fraud in a way no one can explain away. That night, I dreamed about the house. The oak tree gone. The porch empty. Strangers inside my bedroom, touching my things, claiming space they didn't understand. I woke up shaking. Bethany made coffee and didn't ask questions. 2 days later, Torres called again. This guy's name isn't Noah Reynolds, he said. I froze. He's used at least 3 aliases, Torres continued. Real name is Richard Kowalski. Warrants in 3 states. Same pattern every time. Marry in. Control finances. Extract equity. Disappear. He targeted your family, Torres said flatly. He didn't fall into this. He planned it. I closed my eyes. Every smile, every lecture, every comment about responsibility, all rehearsed. He's setting up a loan, Torres added. Closing is scheduled for Thursday morning. Where? I asked. Greenfield Savings and Loan. Mr. Henley inhaled slowly when I told him. That's good, he said. They cooperate with investigations. We're ready, I said. So are they. The next 48 hours moved like a countdown. Torres documented meetings, photographed exchanges, recorded conversations with people who didn't ask too many questions for the right price. Noah grew bolder. He bought new clothes, talked about vacations, mentioned trading in his truck. He thought he'd won. The closing was scheduled for 10 a.m. I sat in a coffee shop across the street, hands wrapped around a mug I didn't drink, watching Noah and my mother walk toward the bank. Mom looked small, clutched his arm like an anchor. Noah looked confident. The doors closed behind them. Torres texted me updates in real time. Documents signed. He's relaxed. Now. At exactly 18 minutes past 10, my phone rang. Emma, Mr. Henley said. It's time. I stood, crossed the street, pushed open the glass doors, and walked into the room where everything he'd built was about to collapse. The conference room smelled like burned coffee and synthetic cleaner. That was the first thing I noticed when I stepped inside. The second was the silence. My mother sat frozen at the table, her purse clutched to her chest like a shield. Her mascara had already begun to run, thin black lines streaking down her cheeks. Across from her, Noah, Richard, sat stiffly in his new navy suit, wrists cuffed to the arms of his chair, staring at me like I'd stepped out of a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Hello, Noah, I said softly. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. I believe you wanted to discuss rent? For a moment, no one spoke. Then Noah lunged forward instinctively, the metal cuffs snapping him back into place, with a sharp clang that echoed through the room. You, he hissed. You little. Mr. Kowalski, Detective Martinez interrupted calmly, stepping between us. You're going to sit back and keep quiet. My mother finally found her voice. Emma? She whispered. What are you doing here? I crossed the room slowly, placing a neat folder on the table in front of her. I live here, I said gently, legally. Her eyes dropped to the documents, the trust papers, the deed. The truth landed slowly, like something too heavy to absorb all at once. I don't understand, she said, shaking her head. The house was my father's. I thought you thought what he wanted you to think, I replied softly. Noah laughed then, a short, sharp sound edged with panic. This is a setup, he snapped. She set me up. That lawyer, this whole thing. No, I said. You set yourself up. Detective Martinez laid out the facts methodically. False identity. Fraudulent loan applications. forged ownership documents, rental scams, prior warrants. Each sentence stripped another layer away until there was nothing left of the man my mother had married. Richard Kowalski slumped back in his chair, sweat beating at his temples. "This isn't over," he muttered. "It is," Martinez replied, "for you." My mother broke then. She folded in on herself, sobbing quietly as the weight of 2 stolen years crashed down around her. "I worked so hard," she whispered. "I thought we were barely surviving." I reached for her hand. "You were surviving," I said. He was stealing. They took him away 10 minutes later. No dramatic outburst, no last words worth remembering, just the sound of handcuffs and a door closing behind him. The fallout didn't feel victorious. It felt hollow. The house was quiet when we returned that evening. No television humming, no heavy footsteps pacing the living room. Just the creak of familiar floorboards and the steady presence of walls that had witnessed everything. "I don't know how to fix this," my mother said later, sitting at the kitchen table where she used to sort bills late into the night. "You don't have to fix it alone," I told her. The legal aftermath moved fast. Charges stacked up. Accounts were frozen. Civil suits filed. Richard Kowalski had been running variations of the same scam for over a decade. We were just the family that stopped him. Some money was recovered, most wasn't. But the house was secure, undeniably, permanently. I didn't go back to high school right away. Instead, I took my GED and enrolled in community college, studying business administration with a focus on real estate law. Mr. Henley offered me a part-time job at his firm. "You see patterns most adults miss," he said. "That's rare." 3 days before Richard's sentencing, a letter arrived. The handwriting was cramped, desperate. "Emma, I know you hate me. I don't blame you. I never meant for things to go this far. I was in debt. I thought borrowing against the house would fix everything. I never planned to hurt your family." I read it twice, then filed it away. Some apologies arrived too late to matter. The sentencing was quiet. 7 years. Restitution ordered. No chance of early release. I watched without satisfaction. Justice isn't loud. It just closes doors. 2 years later, the house on Maple Street reopened with new purpose. The Catherine Reynolds Foundation. Temporary housing. Legal assistance. Safety. My mother became its director. Fierce, focused, unapologetic. "I spent years feeling stupid," she told a reporter once. "Now I help women remember they're not." I graduated with honors, accepted into law school. On the anniversary of Richard's arrest, I stood on the front porch, watching the oak tree sway in the breeze. Torres texted me a photo of the article. "Your grandfather would be proud." He was right. The house was never just property. It was a promise, and now it kept one. Justice didn't arrive all at once. It came in envelopes, certified letters, court summons, bank notices stamped fraud investigation. Each one landed on our kitchen counter like a small aftershock. Reminders that even after the arrest, the damage didn't magically disappear. For weeks, my mother moved through the house like a ghost. She kept apologizing for believing him, for not protecting me, for the money, for the years she thought she'd failed as a parent. I tried to stop her every time. "Mom," I told her one night as we sat on the living room floor, backs against the couch, paperwork spread everywhere. "He trained you to doubt yourself. That wasn't an accident." She nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on the floor. "I keep replaying it," she whispered. "Every conversation, every bill I paid without checking, every time he told me I was lucky he handled things." Her voice broke. "I let him teach me I wasn't smart. That was the cruelest part of men like Richard Kowalski. They didn't just steal money. They hollowed people out." Mr. Henley worked tirelessly, coordinating with prosecutors, tracing funds, filing civil claims. He explained every step to me, never once suggesting I was too young to understand. "You earn the right to know," he said simply. The criminal case moved faster than the civil one. Evidence was overwhelming. Richard had forged documents, impersonated mortgage officers, used shell accounts, and pocketed tens of thousands of dollars across multiple states. We weren't his first victims, just the last. At the sentencing hearing, I sat in the second row beside my mother. Richard stood at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit, his confidence completely stripped away. No smirk, no lectures about responsibility. When the judge read the charges, I watched his shoulders sag lower with every count. Mortgage fraud, identity theft, criminal enterprise, 7 years. Full restitution ordered. The number sounded final, heavy. Richard glanced back once, his eyes locking on mine. There was no anger there anymore, only disbelief. As if he still couldn't accept that the girl he'd threatened with eviction had ended his entire operation. Afterward, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. They asked about the trust, the house, how a teenager had outmaneuvered a career criminal. I didn't answer. This was never about being clever. It was about paying attention. The civil recovery took months. Some money surfaced from accounts Richard hadn't emptied in time. Most of it was gone forever, siphoned into debts and disappearances that would never fully untangle. What mattered was that the house was safe, untouchable. One evening, long after the legal dust settled, my mother and I sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the oak tree sway under the porch light. "I forgot this house belonged to us," she said quietly. I looked at her. "I think he made you forget on purpose." She nodded slowly. "I want to do something with it," she said after a long pause. "Something good. Something that makes all of this mean something." That was the night the idea took root. The Catherine Reynolds Foundation. We started small. One room converted into temporary housing, legal referrals, emergency support. Mr. Henley offered his services at cost. Torres volunteered to teach security workshops. Social workers reached out. Survivors found us through word of mouth. The house filled with voices again. Not arguments, not fear. Stories. Women arrived carrying trash bags of clothes and quiet trauma. They stayed for weeks or months, rebuilding credit, filing restraining orders, learning how to read contracts without panic tightening their chests. My mother became someone I'd never seen before. Confident, decisive, fierce. She used her hospital background to navigate insurance systems, advocate for care, push back when agencies tried to dismiss our residents. "I didn't lose 2 years," she said once. "I trained for this." I finished community college with honors and applied to law school, focusing on consumer protection and white-collar crime. The foundation funded my education in exchange for 5 years of service after graduation. It felt fair. The house had protected me. On the second anniversary of Richard's arrest, I stood on the front porch watching a support group meeting through the living room windows. 6 women sat in a circle, coffee mugs in hand, nodding as one of them spoke through tears. The oak tree rustled above them. My phone buzzed. A message from Torres. "Saw the foundation on the news. Your grandfather would be proud." I smiled. He was right. Richard had tried to take our home. Instead, he gave it a purpose he never could have imagined. By the time the house on Maple Street officially reopened, it no longer felt like a crime scene. It felt alive. The renovation took 18 months, and nearly everything left in my trust, but every decision was deliberate. We preserved the bones of the Victorian, its wide staircases, high ceilings, and stained glass accents, while making it safe, accessible, and functional for women who needed more than just a roof. Each unit had a small kitchen, a private bathroom, locks that worked, internet strong enough for job applications, court filings, and late-night research when sleep refused to come. Safety wasn't a luxury here. It was the foundation. The Catherine Reynolds Foundation opened quietly. No ribbon cutting, no speeches, just keys handed to a woman who hadn't slept indoors in weeks and cried when she realized the bedroom door locked from the inside. My mother stood beside her, calm and steady, explaining house rules and resources like she'd been doing it her whole life. Watching her, I realized something. Richard hadn't just underestimated me. He'd underestimated her, too. Mom took to the role of director with a precision that surprised even Mr. Henley. She organized partnerships with hospitals, domestic violence shelters, and legal aid offices. She spoke at town halls about financial abuse, using her own experience without shame or self-pity. "I believed someone because I loved him," she told one audience. "That doesn't make me weak. It makes me human." Predators rely on shame to stay invisible. Women lined up afterward to talk to her. Some stayed. Some just needed to hear that they weren't stupid. I balanced classes with foundation work, commuting between campus and Maple Street, drafting intake forms by day, and reading case law by night. Consumer protection, white-collar crime, fraud statutes that suddenly felt personal instead of theoretical. Mr. Henley met with me weekly. "You're not angry," he observed once. "That's unusual." I said honestly, "but anger burns fast. This lasts longer." He smiled. "That's what makes you dangerous to people like him." Richard Kowalski's restitution hearings dragged on, predictable and hollow. He had no money left to recover. His criminal network unraveled under investigation, mortgage brokers and notaries losing licenses, shell companies collapsing one by one. It didn't bring satisfaction. It brought closure. The house did that. By the end of the second year, we'd helped 23 women rebuild some version of stability. Jobs, custody agreements, clean credit reports, confidence that didn't evaporate when someone raised their voice. On quiet mornings, I'd sit on the restored wraparound porch with a cup of coffee, watching the oak tree sway exactly as it had when my grandfather planted it decades earlier. Strong roots, wide shade. Legacy, I realized, isn't about what you leave behind. It's about what keeps growing after you're gone. I was accepted into Vermont Law School that spring. The foundation board approved the funding unanimously, formalizing my 5-year commitment to serve fraud victims after graduation. Richard was notified from prison. He never responded. On the anniversary of his arrest, I walked through the house alone, pausing in rooms that once held fear and now held hope. Laughter drifted from the kitchen. A child's drawing hung on the fridge. My phone buzzed. A text from Torres. "Heard you got into law school. Your grandfather would be proud." I typed back a simple reply. "I hope so." Richard had demanded rent from a house he didn't own. He thought power came from control, threats, and taking what wasn't his. He was wrong. Real power came from knowing the truth, protecting what mattered, and using it to shelter others when the storm hit. The house on Maple Street had been in my family for 3 generations. Now it would serve families for generations more.